General accesses those books. And actually, and I'm trying to raise this issue to all of us. We see one way of also handling the about issue of corruption. It is dealing with those officers and not yes in a particular office, in a particular police station. This guy who is in charge of traffic, the money that is collected, that's why you will never miss police traffic on the road just to correct something to deliver. If your vehicle is held in a police station, the much that you get out with, you will not get it in full. So, Madam President, kindly help us probably to address the issue and probably to enlighten ourselves. Even as we say, the corruption is a high office. We are also supposed to deal it whereby we can be.
Thank you. Thank you. Kuri, are you done? Hello?
I'm done.
Kuri, can you hear me? Thank you. Thank you. Sandra, can you hear me? I think we can have Sandra and Joy, then we can address those first, and then we go to the others, individuals who have requested for the mic. Sandra, if you can hear me. Joy, can you hear me? Hassan, Mr. Hassan. Even as we wait for the others to raise their concerns, I think there are two first issues that have been raised. The first speaker raised the question of how we can reach out to advocates. I want to draw your attention to the Law Society of Kenya page and the page of the President of the Law Society of Kenya. You will notice that we have posted a toll number. That toll number provides you with contacts with the Law Society of Kenya to report any case of arrest that touches on the demonstrations, that touches on Article 37. It's very important to know that as a society, we are monitoring and will continue to monitor because it's our duty under the Law Society Act, Section 4, to monitor any atrocities, any unconstitutionalities that are orchestrated on the members of the public. And that's why we have that toll number. If you don't have it, you'll be able to check on the Twitter space of the Law Society of Kenya and even the space of the President of the Law Society of Kenya, the page, the X space. You'll be able to find a toll number where you can be able to address that concern, especially when you've been arrested without any reason, or you've been incarcerated beyond 24 hours, or you have your rights under the Bill of Rights. Remember, the rights of individuals as citizens stretch beyond the right under Article 37. So whichever right that you feel has been undermined, perhaps it's very important that you actually inform us so that we'll be able to have our teams address to it. The President indicated, and I think she has indicated in other forums, that we have advocates across the country, in all the counties and in all court stations, to address concerns of violations of human rights. So do not hesitate at any moment to perhaps address these concerns to us. And now that she's here, she'll be able to perhaps reiterate that position. The second question was the issue of cash bail, the letter to the police. Remember, there is no requirement under the Constitution. In the hierarchy of laws, the Constitution is supreme. The right to picket, as contained under Article 37, is not a right that is subject to statute. I do not know any statute in this country that provides for the requirement that the members of the public must notify. But there is what informed the question of giving a notice to the members of the public, especially when you want to exercise Article 37, was for purpose of requesting the police officers to give you security. But again, a notice can be issued publicly. A notice can be issued on social media. There is no requirement that you have to write to a specific individual to exercise a constitutional right. The drafters of the Constitution did not anticipate a situation where you have to seek for someone's consent to exercise that right. It's inherent, it's fundamental, and for that reason, it cannot suffice that you have to write. What if they refuse? It means if they refuse to issue you with to issue with directions, that means your right is violated, and that's the reason why the drafters of the Constitution did not give anyone the right to guarantee you permission to demonstrate or to exercise your rights under Article 37. The last question that was asked, even before I invite the other questions, because I can see the advocates are already on the session, was the question of cash bail in police stations. I want to ask you to look at bail and bond policy directions. These are documents that are available online. The bail and bond policy directions as to on the question of police officers giving you cash bail are available. And those policy directions provide a range of approaches. A police officer is supposed to give reasonable bail, just the same way when you've been presented in court. But remember, when you are at the police station, you are an arrested person. When you are in court, you are an accused person. Of public prosecution, who approves charges. Any charge, any criminal charge is approved by the by the Director of Public Prosecutions. And even before they approve, they have a policy on plea taking. They have to look at the case, they have to look at the facts, they have to consider the evidence before they approve a charge for any offense. Those are laws within our country that actually regulate prosecution of such cases. And so when you have been arrested in a police station, you are just an accused person. You have not been charged with any offense. Because if you are to be charged before a court of law, by the time you are presented before that court, the Director of Public Prosecution must have approved that charge, must have looked at the evidence presented, and there are so many cases to that effect. And it's very important to note that police officers do that duty of investigating and presenting the evidence before the Director of Public Prosecution. But since we are deliberately speaking on the question of arbitrary arrests, if you think you have been arbitrarily arrested and you have been denied bail, then that is where, of course, the policy on cash and bond at the police station come in place. The police officers are under that policy. Have been given powers to release you on a free bond and issue you with directions to appear there, depending on the charge. They also have discretion to give you a certain amount that is reasonable. The word is reasonable, that you are able to come back. Of course, there are serious cases, serious offenses where they will decide to hold you until the following day and present you in a court of law. And in a court of law, they request for more time through a miscellaneous application to have you present to continue the investigation while they are holding you. But remember, that power to hold you beyond 24 hours is power that is given to the court. It's not given at the police station. They have no mandate. They have no powers to hold you beyond 24 hours. But they have power to hold you within 24 hours. Beyond that period, then it becomes an unconstitutional incarceration. And so you have a right to demand through your advocate or individually to actually request to be released on a reasonable cash bail depending on the offense. The offense of demonstrations, and you have seen the precedents that have been created by our courts of law, that you can actually proceed. The courts have released people who are accused of picketing on a free bond. It means that this is an offense that does not warrant you to pay a huge amount of money. And therefore, unless you are accused of an offense of destruction of property, and it's very important that you know which offense you have been accused for about or of at the time of arrest, you have a right to demand and seek for information as to why you have been arrested. There is an occurrence book where a report of your arrest is actually reported. You have to request that they show you. If they refuse, ensure that your next of kin or someone else can be able to check, or a family friend can be able to check on the OB and demand to know which offense you've been arrested on, so that based on that offense you're able to know, to advise, to indicate to your advocate or any other person representing you that I've been arrested for this offense, I did not commit, or I committed this offense and I need your legal assistance. So once you have that understanding, it's very important to know. We are asking you not to. It's very important for you to know, if you want to exercise your right under Article 37, please do not commit other offenses under the Penal Code. Remember, theft or stealing or robbery with violence, those are offenses under our Penal Code. Remember, there are offenses to do with destruction of property. Remember, there are offenses to do with assaulting other people, violating other people's rights while they are demonstrating. And it's very important that you stick to your right to demonstrate. Do not be subjected to destroying property, because that is not contained in our constitution, because that becomes an offense under the Penal Code, and you'll be charged for that offense. And if indeed it's true that you committed that offense, it's very important that, of course, the court will know that you did not participate. And of course, the threshold in criminal cases is beyond reasonable doubt. If the prosecution is able to prove that you committed that offense, then you will suffer the punishments. But it's very important that you subject yourself as per the provisions of Article 37. Do not go beyond the violation, the provisions of the Constitution in demonstrating. And picketing does not involve those other things. And therefore, that is why we are very specific as to the exercise of that right going forward. I can see several advocates. I can see PLO. I can see Wakili Steve. Perhaps if you can allow me to ask, to allow the other members to ask questions so that you can be able to address them. If you can confirm kindly, Steve and PLO, that you can hear me. You have the microphones. So we can ask several questions even as you have the microphones. PLO, you can hear me? Steve, any of you?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, Mano.
Thank you. Thank you, PLO. Perhaps if you can allow us to take a few other questions on this issue so that you are able to address the same appropriately. Thank you. We have Kevo. Kevo, are you still there? Kevo Kevi or Joy? Kevo Kevi. Can you guys hear me? If you have a microphone and you think you're not going to drop it so that we can give other people opportunity to speak. Lekishon, can you hear me? Yes, clearly.
question on this matter is arising out of the recent decision by the court that the police are not supposed to use violence or even what do you call it, tear gas and all these other violent means. And the following day, I believe, the police proceeded to do exactly what they were told not to do by the courts. The question I have is, is the Law Society, and I'm asking Madam President, going to take any action in that respect so that the police don't interfere again? The other aspect related to that is the question of anticipatory actions, such as writing to the international community, maybe the UN or some other body that, so that, because this thing now requires, we look beyond our borders sometimes. We have friends, we have enemies, but I think it's good to look outwards, so that this right is protected. Right now there is a lot of impunity around it by the way the police has been behaving. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I hope you have heard those questions.
Let me answer some and then you can answer the rest. With regards to our
Okay.
response, we'll be issuing a statement. Just we've been analyzing what's been going on in terms of the bodies that were collected, were identified. Let me not say yet identified, the bodies that were found, and what the communication that has since come from the DCI from the last two press statements, and we'll be issuing our position on the same. As LSK, our position is we thank the DCI for calling upon us to work hand in hand with them. But the challenge that we continue to have is some of these bodies, the identification process, we will analyze closely, due process is followed, even how investigations were done on this matter, because it's of national importance that, irrespective whether they are arising from the Maandmano killings or not, our security agencies should provide us with adequate security. And so such killings happen in such a magnitude, and we need to see the repository where there are missing names register that can coordinate or collate with regards to those missing persons that have been found. We still have tracing people who are being found in mortuaries arising from the Maandmanos. We still need accountability and investigation. In the swift manner it was done for this particular incident to be done. We have police officers that have been identified that are still on the streets, and we hope we will not see them on the streets tomorrow, because we will censure our investigative agencies if this is what they are treating us to. We need police that have killed, police that have abused their powers, to be held accountable. It's not enough that the Inspector General has resigned. That is command responsibility, but we also want those individual police officers that have abused their powers, that have killed, to be held accountable. Let them answer before a court of law. And we'll be looking at also different avenues with regards to who are our partners, local and international, that we can work to ensure that we leave no man behind and we have justice for all the victims during these protests. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Just to add to what the President has said, of course, we have cases in court as the Law Society, and you've seen the orders that have been that were issued by the courts on the question of the abuses committed by the police officers. As the President has indicated, we have several matters touching on the individual office bearers, office holders within those spaces. I'm talking about the DCI. I'm talking about the Inspector General Police. I'm talking about the Nairobi area head. I'm talking about the director of the National Intelligence Service, and those are the institutions that have actually been involved in this process and are in charge of our police force. We have held them individually responsible, and those matters are ongoing. And I think that's the best we can do. We have also instituted proceedings in form of contempt of court, especially on a continued violation by individual police officers, individual OCSs who had a number of the police stations where people have been held beyond 24 hours. And those cases are ongoing, I believe, as the Law Society will ensure that the individuals who violated these rights of the members of the public are able to be brought to book, and they are able to take up the responsibility for those violations. Before I bring in PLO, on the questions, kindly,
Perhaps, perhaps
yes,
the you haven't. I don't think Madam has answered I'm happy with the question, the way she has answered the first part. But the second part of my question was the idea of escalating to international bodies that can help us, whether it is after the fact or whatever. It's good to bring it up to international level, to the relevant bodies under the UN and so forth, so that we are able to they are able to help us deal with the criminal aspect of the way the police are handling this matter.
Thank you, Madam President. Are you there? If you can be able to take that.
We are working on modalities, yes, because we know there are the special rapporteurs that also deal with the same. And so some have reached out, and so we'll be preparing our reports and sharing so that they can also do their own independent investigations. But I can assure you, the different agencies are already monitoring what is happening. So some have shared their views and their concerns, and that's why we are trying as much as possible to also work with the different agencies so that we have one front with regards to how we are dealing with these matters. But yes, some have reached out already. The scenario is in the country.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you. ARN, I hope your question has already been answered. I want to invite Daniel. Daniel, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Good evening.
Kindly proceed.
Yes,
Good evening.
I have two questions. And my first question is this. I was asking about, as tomorrow, we are protesting tomorrow. We know you have some politicians who are planning to disrupt our protest so that they may look ugly. What are the steps or measures you as Law Society of Kenya have taken to avoid that case? And another question. This question I wanted to ask for many days, but today I think it is the right time to ask because I see Dr. Miguna here. There was an issue that was raised by Miguna on Twitter concerning the killings that happened in Githurai. And he challenged the Royal Society of Kenya and other agencies about investigation, you to take out investigation, and even said that many people were killed, almost 400 people, and they were cremated in Kahawa barracks. Can we get that clarification? And if it may be, you may invite Dr. Miguna to give us clarification, because that question has been hitting me for many days.
Thank you for that question. I will take two more. Perhaps then I can allow Madam President to address the same and the advocates on this session.
Hello, can I go on? Yes, thank you.
Who's speaking?
Kevin speaking.
Please proceed.
Thank you for the opportunity. Mine is simple and straight. We witnessed abductions going on, and we talked about it, but it seems there is no action being taken. Recently, I've seen a clip, somebody being abducted with the police who are in civilian attires, and some are guarding them in a uniform. What is the Law Society doing to curb this? Because I say we keep talking and then there's no action. Like, I mean, we're not a banana republic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam President, if you are there, you can pick those, even as I invite the other colleagues to address them.
Let me pick this one and then the other colleagues can answer. Now, with regards to what we are doing,
Thank
we
you.
picked up that complaint and will be also, we had moved the court with regards to some of these complaints, but also we'll seek to move the court further in terms of issuing declaratory orders with regards to what is happening, because we have sought habeas corpus, but unless we're able to identify the name of that individual, then we can seek for the court to demand he be produced before a court of law and either is charged or released. The other option would be to seek for a declaratory orders for the courts to pronounce themselves, particularly on the kind of abductions that are taking place in this country.
Thank you, Madam President. To add on what you have said, I think the High Court issued orders that were open-ended, and this is very important for the members of the public to understand. This was not; these orders are not limited to the initial habeas corpus and the initial abduction petition that the Law Society did. It's very important to note that the Law Society did habeas corpus application. A habeas corpus is a production of the individuals who have been disappeared, who are not able to be found in police stations, but who the members of the public know were actually abducted by police officers. And in those several suits that we filed in petitions that we filed in court, in one of them, Honorable Justice Mugambi directed that the individuals who were arrested at the time they were 13, any other future arrests. So the order was open-ended to include any future arrests, that the police officers must do their duty. Remember, the Constitution provides for these things. This is not new under our Constitution. The Constitution provides that if you have been arrested, you have to be informed of what you are arrested for, and you have to be produced in court within 24 hours, and charges read to you, and so that you can actually respond to those charges. It is a responsibility given under the Constitution. What the Law Society is doing is to actually bring to the attention of the court on those constitutional violations. And of course, the court has a duty to give interim directives. And that's why we said, to avoid members, people, Kenyan citizens who have been appointed to public office, using those offices and abusing them and using them by ensuring that they violate individual rights of the members of the public, we will actually institute proceedings. And that is what we have done under their individual names. If you are an OCS commanding a particular police station and your police officers have violated and gone against the Constitution to hold an individual beyond the period stipulated in the Constitution, they have proceeded and actually armed a peaceful protester. They have proceeded and actually murdered an individual. Then they have a duty to answer to those violations in their individual capacity as the bosses of those police stations. And therefore, I think as a Law Society, we are doing what it takes to ensure that we hold responsible the people who have been put in office to actually keep law and order. Remember, we have had several citizen assembly discussions on these questions of the Bill of Rights and the rights of arrested persons, individuals who are suspected to have committed an offense. We indicated earlier that the first 2 weeks of the demonstrations, as the Law Society of Kenya, we monitored the first demonstration. There were close to 400 people arrested in the evening of that demonstration. And in that evening, 397 were released. The only 3 who were left and who are presented in court without a charge was Boniface Mwangi and 2 others. And in court, the police officers refused to present these individuals in court. And we found out later on that the DPP refused to charge. Why? Because the evidence presented by the police officers did not meet the threshold to institute a suit. And remember, some of these cases are the ones that actually bring the backlog within our courts. You bring a frivolous case just for the sake of it to charge someone in court. You actually clog the court with frivolous cases which are actually bound to be dismissed. Then we blame the court for the backlog. And I think I appreciate the fact that the DPP looks into these cases case by case and actually determines which one should go to court. And therefore we had the Boniface Mwangi and the two others released at the parking lot in court without a charge. Subsequent to that, we've been following on those arrests that have been in place. And I think it's very important that we hold the individuals who hold these offices responsible. It's no longer tenable to actually hide behind the office that you sit in and assume that personal responsibility will not be taken upon you as an individual. I will invite PLO perhaps to address the other questions that have been asked. I think there's a question about, I think the president has addressed the question of Miguna and the investigations and Kahawa Barracks. Kevin asked a question on the question on witnesses and abductions and police officers actually using plain clothes and use it without identifying themselves, arresting individuals. Kindly, PLO, if you can hear me, if you can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend and learned colleague Mano. Well, once again, welcome on board to all patriots who are here listening to, into the space. And I've been listening to a couple of questions, save for the one that you've raised, Mano. There's this particular question on the use of tear gas, the water cannons, based on the decision and the compliance with this particular directive. So I think I will answer them in quick succession, if you permit me a little latitude. So one, the other day, around, should be towards the end of last month or early this month. So the High Court sitting in Malindi, issued temporary orders stopping security agencies, and that would mean the National Police Service and any security agency incidental thereto, from using water cannons against protesters, from using tear gas against protesters, or just persons, who are we, the people who are protesting against not just the Finance Bill 2024 as media, has been misreporting some of the media houses, but protesting based on the governance issues that we would like addressed so that we chart a new path as a country. So these are still the orders granted by the court, and that would mean when we appear on the streets tomorrow, to exercise our rights against, excesses of power and Article 37 of the Constitution, then police or whoever will be deployed to quote unquote man or deal with peaceful protesters, because we are peaceful, should not in any way unleash terror through water cannons and tear gases. So those are still the orders subsisting before the courtroom. So violation and defiance or defilement of these particular orders will mean that the police or any security agency are actually acting in excess, in contempt of court orders, and of course that would consequently warrant further actions against those who perpetrate such terror on the protesters and those who assemble technically to do that which they're required to do under, of course, the precincts of the law. So this other question on the dress code, for the identification for police officers. Well, the National Police Service, which is technically the umbrella, of different, organs or security agencies, including DCI, including GSU, including ATPU, including, anti-stock theft, and different, security agencies underneath the National Police Service, including AP as well. So they are governed, by law, of course, first by the Constitution as the apex or the grand norm of laws in the country. And secondly, by the National Police Service Act and the subsidiary legislation and regulations thereto. And one most important thing that people do forget is about the National Police Service standing orders as at June 2017. So this particular standing orders, when you quickly go to chapter 31 of these standing orders, it talks about the dress code regulation. And I will move swiftly to standing order number 22 and chapter 31 of the National Police Service standing orders. So standing order 22 talks about plain clothes, officers. Of course, there's conduct of when are police officers supposed to dress in plain clothes and when a police officer is supposed to dress and identify themselves, as law established. So standing order number 22, I would just read it verbatim. It talks about police officers other than those who are attached to 1, DCI, 2, to the Internal Affairs Unit, and then lastly, you have the VIP protection sections and crime branches who shall wear uniform when on duty. So that is the provision under, standing order number 22, chapter 31 of the dress code regulations under the National Police Service standing orders. And then further, the standing orders direct that, if you don't conform within those particular exemptions, however, even these particular exemptions require special circumstances, and nowhere would Article 37 fit into special circumstances where even officers from DCI or officers from Internal Affairs Unit, and VIP protection sections would meddle into a peaceful protest. Because the first question you should ask yourself is why would, officers attached to VIP protection sections when, 2 or so weeks ago after the untimely and sad demise of Rex Kanyeki, may his soul rest in eternal comfort, the officer who apparently, was alleged to have, shot him, it was alleged he works at the office of the president. So why would an officer who works at the office of the president, which I would assume based on standing order number 22, works for the VIP protection, or maybe not, because when you look at OP, Harambee House, the way it's wired, different departments require different manning. Of course, there are officers who may be working at the office of the president, Harambee House, but they just man either the main gates or the doors that lead to the offices of different persons who work at that particular building. So why would police officers within the VIP protection unit, within the Internal Affairs Unit, involve themselves in peaceful protest? So the bottom line here is that identification of police officers should be at all times, either if you don't have, your badge or ID or your service number, which is normally displayed, at the left, subscript of the respective officer, then you are only in defiance of the law. So this has been happening time without numbers, and I think most of you, if not all of you, have seen this pop with maroon or red type of double cabin with persons who mask themselves up. So why would you unleash persons who no one knows about? The protesters don't know about these people. But what is even more saddening is the officers in uniform are working hand in hand with these other persons who haven't identified themselves. They've masked up, they've put all those gears. You don't know exactly who you are dealing with, whether this is a genuine officer or this isn't a genuine officer. And I think LSK has filed. Manu, I think, will shed more light on that, on the identification, the mandatory identification of police officers on duty. Because if you are deployed to calm down protesters, these are peaceful protesters, so technically there's no violence that should be arising. But it gets to a point where violence is instigated by the said police officers who are on duty just to protect, any, form of, property, destruction, and so on and so forth. Even in those particular circumstances, it is required that I know who exactly am I dealing with as a protester, because I'm not carrying any weapon. I'm not carrying any other thing that would perhaps make me not be peaceful as a protester, and that would require that proportionate force, not excessive force, but proportionate force meted on violent, protester based on the circumstances and situation of the moment. So even in places and circumstances where protest may have, perhaps not turned out as it was meant to turn out based on, the prior planning, the kind of force that should be meted out by police should be proportionate to, the opposite, reaction, what exactly is happening on the other side of the road. So, as I wrap up on this, dress code matter, that is, the position of the moment. But even then, we have all these standing orders. It's 1,195 pages of the National Police Service standing orders. But the question we should be asking ourselves is, how many, in the service? Because right now it's hard to tell whether it is a service, it's the National Police Service, or if it's a force still.
PLO, kindly proceed. We've lost you.
All right.
PLO, unmute yourself. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, thanks.
Kindly proceed.
So, I was saying right now, we have degenerated into.
Go on, PLO.
We lost you again. Okay, even as we wait for PLO to return, I think he has already candidly addressed some of the concerns that were raised, especially on plainclothes police officers. It's very important to know that as the Law Society, we have instituted proceedings on those abductions, and some of the issues you have raised in court touch on the failure by the police officers to identify themselves. And this is very important for you to note. And as citizens, you have to actually take precautions at every time. If an individual identifies him or herself as a police officer, then you have to request that they produce their number, their practice number. And the standing orders, as PLO has indicated, require that you have to actually put on the badge. There's a badge that is given to those officers to put on while they are discharging their duties, so that it's very easy to identify these individuals. What the National Police Service is doing is actually allowing individuals who might be involved in kidnappings or illegal offenses to actually arrest members of the public. And that's why we have concerns with regard to people disappearing, people being found in quarries and all that. It's very important that when you're met with this situation, you have to demand and especially what happens in public space. I saw that today there is someone who was kidnapped or was abducted by police officers in Westlands, and there were the people around that space included uniformed police officers. It's very important that you demand for the identity of those individuals, even when they fail. And it's important that this episode was recorded because we can account to those faces. It's very important you also seek that they indicate to you which offense they are arresting you about, so that you already know that you're being arrested for a specific offense. Sometimes, and I know in most cases, they don't indicate who they are. They are wearing masks. They fail to identify themselves, and that's why we are in court today. Previously on this question, we are hoping that the court will give directions, even though the Constitution provides for these issues. And that's why we always run back to court to seek for interpretation and to seek for confirmation of violations, because it's only in court that we can confirm these violations and document the same to ensure that this does not happen to anyone else in the future. We can open up the discussion. I want to call Mr. Daniel. I think if you have spoken, kindly drop your microphone so that we can allow as many people as possible. Mr. Daniel, can you hear me? If Mr. Daniel, you can't hear me, Kisia, if you have the microphone, kindly. Kisia? Dr. Kasi? Dr. Kasim? Mohammed, can you hear me? Kisia, please proceed if you have the microphone. I can see your hand. Kindly unmute yourself so that you are able to speak. Mohammed, are you there? Can someone confirm that my microphone is working kindly? Kisia? Engineer AM? Engineer AM, can you hear me? Free? Free, are you there? Steve, can you hear me? Mohammed Adan. Mohammed Adan. Mohammed, kindly unmute yourself. Mohammed.
Can I proceed?
Dr. Kisia, proceed. Dr. Kisia, proceed. We have had internet issues. Kindly proceed.
Okay. Mine is a question that has been asked by someone on the comments. He said that there are some people who are arrested in Bondo. but I think it was last week. So until now, they haven't been released. And upon inquiry today, they said that they were transferred to Siaya police station. So I don't know how that can be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kisia. Free mind.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Kindly speak, we can hear you.
Okay. Mine is to appreciate the information that is being laid out so that people can be aware of the steps done. So I hope we'll all meet tomorrow and we'll spend make sure we don't violate other people's and yeah, that's all for me. And thanks for the session.
Thank you. Mtujazi Kenya.
Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Steve.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's an honor that you have considered people with not much of a following. So my question will digress from Article 37 of the Constitution, and will just inquire about. So the clarion call has switched from reject finance bill, and it went to Ruto must go. Now we are advocating for good governance and accountability in government. Now, the question is, what will essentially happen if our president decides to resign? We know that that will be a difficult thing to come to reality, but there is a possibility. And if the possibility becomes reality, what might